Welcome to GodPrints, where stories of grief, faith, and healing come to life. Jenny Leavitt is an author, mental health coach, and founder of Resilient Hope. Now, Jenny and Caleb share their journey through unimaginable loss, survivor's guilt, and the slow, sacred road toward healing. That even in the darkest nights, we will see God's fingerprints all over our story. If you or someone you love is navigating loss, survivor's guilt, or deep sorrow, join us. We're here to walk with you, cry with you, and remind you, you are not alone, and hope is still within reach. These are our stories. These are his GodPrints. Let's begin.
Hi everyone, we're back again. I am Jenny and this is my son Caleb, and we're going to be talking with you today about sibling grief versus parental grief. When you go through a tragedy like our family went through, those of you that may just be joining us, it'll be 10 years this year, 10 years next month. It's kind of crazy, but so 10 years ago this year in 2015, to make a long story short, all four of us, my husband and I and Caleb and his brother Jacob, were on the way home from a church event where we'd all been at, and Caleb and Jacob were hit by a drunk driver. Our son Jacob was 17 at the time and he died on the scene, and Caleb almost died. He had catastrophic injuries. I'm only half joking when I say that I have to think of top of your head down to the bottom of your feet to try to remember all the injuries, and I don't even know how many surgeries you had. But thank God, God spared Caleb, and he's here with us today. And so today we're going to kind of tackle some of the differences between what it's like when you go through a trauma like as a parent, which I've shared quite a bit about, and Caleb has shared some about what it's like to lose a sibling, but we're going to delve into that a little bit more today to try to help some of you that maybe you've lost a sibling. And I know one of the things you told me before, Caleb, is as the sibling you can feel kind of overlooked or even forgotten in the middle of all the grief, because so much of the focus can be on the parents, because everybody just assumes the parents are hurting and they kind of can forget about the siblings that are left behind. So in your own, I know you've shared a little bit before, but in your own words, like, what do you think might be some of the differences that maybe people don't think of right off with it being a sibling who's lost your brother versus the parent?
So, and obviously, every loss is a different situation, and because I was the one that was with him in the car and driving, and I was the one that, at least at the time after the accident, I felt like I was the one that was the deepest impacted by it, but it didn't feel like that's how everybody else viewed it, and so I think that played a factor in it. But even if that wasn't the case, I know that there have been others I have spoken with over the years that have lost a sibling, and sometimes they just feel like they've been overlooked or almost lost in the mix, because, and rightfully so, that there should be a focus on parents, the mom, the dad, but there is a sibling bond. And me and Jacob, we had our rough moments, our fights, our arguments, disagreements over the years. A lot of, so any brother would, brother and sister, just siblings, they all have arguments and disagreements, but there is still that bond that is, I think one of the deepest. So, and to have that bond just ripped away, and there was no warning. Obviously, the months after the accident, it was really me focusing on my rehab, because I was in rehab. Also, I was in the ICU for 2 to 3 weeks.
You were in the trauma ICU. He was in the trauma ICU for a couple weeks, then in this trauma step-down unit, then over to regular ICU. It was actually a several-month-long process.
Yeah, and then to Brooks rehab as well for several months, and then at home rehab. So all of that took up a lot of my time and my energy and my focus, and so I really didn't start dealing with the grief for a few months, but whenever I did, then it was like a wave, just kind of crashing into me, and I did feel overlooked in some areas, because a lot of people were reaching out to you and to dad. Like I said, it's definitely needed, but it just didn't feel like either anybody really knew what to say to me or how to help me, or like I actually was kind of pushed off a little bit, just because and I know a part of it is that people who have lost somebody, they're normally older, and so they feel like they can connect maybe with the parents more, I would say. Maybe that's a thing, and so that may be part of it. I don't know. But also, I think another thing is that young people that lose somebody tend to just push it off and not really deal with it. And so even those that have lost somebody at a younger age, they weren't the ones to really reach out. And so I think that all that together kind of, built this little perfect storm to where I felt really, really isolated, and in my grief and, trying to deal with it. So I think that, like, we do need to have open talks about this kind of stuff, and that no matter what your age, no matter who you lost, that's, a son, a daughter, a sibling, another family member, a friend that, you were close with, that you need to be able to start to deal with the grief issues that come with that, the grief itself, the regrets, because that's a major thing. I have worked through a lot of it, but I had a lot of regrets for the way that I treated certain times of my life.